Welcome to the Jones Gallery Lecture Series. I'm Sarah Jones, the curator at Jones Gallery, and we are a contemporary art gallery in St. John, New Brunswick. Our core mandate is to present work by contemporary Canadian artists, but art education is also important to us, and we think that art history should be accessible, understandable, and free. That's why we hold public lectures at the gallery and produce videos like this one. To keep the lecture series free and open, we rely on donations from our viewers. And today's video is brought to you by Sarah, Eric, and Anne. Thank you. If you'd like to support our efforts in this, please donate at jonesgallery.ca/arthistory, and the link is below in the video notes. So up today, we're talking about the Louvre's most famous painting, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. It's probably I'm going to say this. It is the most famous painting in the world. I think I can say that without controversy. The Louvre is, of course, the largest art museum in the world. It's immense collection. But everyone goes to see three things that a museum director kind of lamented, that they come to see the Venus de Milo. So that's the kind of ancient classical sculpture of Venus with her arms missing. The Venus de Milo, Winged Victory, which is another ancient sculpture, or the Mona Lisa. And most people don't care about those other two, especially Winged Victory. You can't even find that one. I mean, it's there somewhere. It took me a long time to find it. Most people are there to see the Mona Lisa. So out of millions and millions of people, we are all trying to jostle into one room. And if you've been there, it's absolute chaos. The Mona Lisa room. And, it's kind of a bit disappointing. Like, I remember seeing it kind of as a younger person, being like, oh, that's it. It's very small. It's kind of like an arm length in height. It's behind bulletproof glass. You can't really get very close. The guards are kind of ushering everyone along to speed up a bit. Now you have about 30 seconds to see the painting before you're kind of shooed unceremoniously out of the room. So it's for being one of the most ubiquitous images in the world, it's sometimes impersonal. You can feel a bit deflated, and so what I'm hoping for today is to give you an intimate look at this painting and really explain why it is actually very interesting and very important in terms of the art historical narrative, and secondly, and this is actually quite a different question, why it's so famous. So first, let's look at the painting itself, and we'll talk a little bit about Leonardo da Vinci, a little bit about his biography and kind of the character of Leonardo, which I think impacts how we perceive the Mona Lisa and other works by him. So here's Leonardo. This is a portrait done by one of his students, Francesco Melzi, in 1516. As we all know a little bit about Leonardo, we all kind of have this idea of him being the quintessential Renaissance man, that he was gifted in drawing and draftsmanship and invention and science and mathematics and art. Apparently he could put on some really good firework displays also. He was a very gregarious person in kind of in all things. Reportedly, I mean, people just really like to be around Leonardo, kind of a brilliant sort of person to share a company with. The King of France actually, just at the end of Leonardo's life, he just gave Leonardo a kind of a manor on his estate, and all he wanted from Leonardo was just so that he could take a walk with him once a day and chat with Leonardo. The King of France just wanted to hang with Leonardo da Vinci. And so there's part of that character that we know that he is one of the preeminent geniuses in our history, and so that always lends a bit of mystique to all of his work. Plus, also because he had such divergent interest, so he really liked pink and purple tights. just think that's such a great, what a vision. Whether he was off trying to find new pairs of pink and purple tights and setting fashion trends in Florence, or whether he's chatting with the emperor or organizing a firework display or inventing a new tank or war machine, there actually aren't that many paintings that he finished. He would rarely. There are all kinds of unfinished ones. We have all these stories of patrons and people who commission artwork or portraits trying to track him down years after years, trying to get the painting that they had paid for. But it's almost like he would get distracted. He would paint along and then just he'd kind of wander off and do something else. Or he would experiment with techniques. So that's why the Last Supper is peeling off the wall, because he was experimenting with something. And you can see the dates here with the Mona Lisa, that he worked on this for kind of dedicated himself for 3 or 4 years, 1503 to 6. But then until 15, 17, 19, he never gave it to the person who commissioned this painting, to the patron. He just kind of hung on to it, kept working on it, which is part of. He did this with a lot of his paintings. So it's, this isn't kind of marks this as particularly special, but there's a bit of mythology around that too. That there was something that he found very interesting in the work, and really wanted to. Sorry, our phone is ringing here at the gallery. Really wanted to hang on to it over the course of a few years. Oh, and this is a description from Vasari, who was a generation after Leonardo. You can see that even at the time he was recognized kind of as something special, or there was something kind of genius in him. And now that's my dog woofing also. I'm in isolation with my dog at the studio. He didn't like the phone ringing. Back to the Mona Lisa. We do think we have the identity of the sitter. That's kind of part of, not being exactly sure, because she's not identified by her full name here, Mona Lisa. But Vasari does note, and Vasari sometimes is, a wee bit unreliable. So there's always kind of this caveat that this might be true. It sounds good, but Vasari noted that Leonardo undertook to execute for Francesco del Giocondo the portrait of Mona Lisa, his wife, and that he lingered over it for 4 years, left it unfinished. And the work today, this is Vasari speaking here in the 1550s, the work today is in the possession of King Francis of France. So that's really what we have. So it's probably, like I said, this woman named, how Vasari said, a woman named Lisa Gherardini. But other than that, there are very scanty details on who exactly she was and how and why Leonardo actually completed it. But what we do have is the painting. So let's take a closer look. Here we have a female figure. Forget her name for now. So we have a female figure. She's sitting in 3/4 kind of portrait style. She's turned kind of 3/4 away from us. Her face also is in kind of a 3/4 profile. But really importantly, she is making eye contact with the viewer. There's that kind of mythology too, or this story that her eyes will follow you around the room. That's just a load of nonsense. Anytime a painting where the subject is looking out, so it's kind of like making eye contact with the lens of a camera, right? That if you move the camera around, it'll still look like you're making eye contact with whoever is with you, the viewer. So that's not real. But she is indeed making eye contact with us, the viewer. And her eyes are following us around because we are the viewer. So I don't know where that story came from. But anyway, so her hair's down. You can see there's a kind of a diaphanous veil around her hair. There is a landscape of trees and water. in the distance here. And then there is kind of one of the only man-made architectural objects. There's a small bridge to the right side of the painting. And we see her the full extension of her arms here. They are, one elbow is resting on her lap, or possibly the other arm of the chair, as her left arm is, and her arms are crossed at the wrist. And then her hands kind of drape over one over the other. And the painting is cut off, the composition is cut off maybe just below her waist. Now, to really answer the question as to why should you and why do art historians care about this painting? And the answer, I think, lies in, for the answer to a lot of paintings that would appear in art history survey classes or art history books, is that they're doing something different. They're kind of changing the art historical narrative in some way, or moving things forward. So oftentimes there is a trend that is happening, or the way that things are normally done or normally portrayed, and then an artist will come along and will upend that tradition and do something radically new and different. And then if that radically new and different approach then impacts subsequent artists, that's what we're really interested in, is seeing that something's different and then it has kind of a lasting reach or a lasting impact beyond the life of the artist. And that's what we have with Leonardo's Mona Lisa. So let's look at some of his some other portraits that would have been done at the time. The first I want to show you is Botticelli's Portrait of a Man with the medal of Cosimo the Elder, so right around the same time, 1474. And the other painting I'll be using throughout this video is a work by Piero della Francesca, the Duke and Duchess of Urbino, so completed around the same time. So let's look at Botticelli's first. And the first thing that I'll argue that Leonardo is doing that is revolutionary and important is the changes he's making to the composition. And traditionally, portraiture, here, the figure, you can see his shoulders are square to the viewer. So he's kind of facing us directly, although his head is turned. His head is turned slightly. But it was common for the figure to be kind of posed on a kind of very frontal view. Whereas the Mona Lisa is, like I said, kind of 3/4 turn, which I can't think of any other time that was done. So that's new. Also, what's new is that it was common kind of for the arms and the hands to be shown, but they were always kind of lifted up. So you can see this figure here. He's lifting up that medal or that medallion kind of up to his chest level. And so the rest of his body is cut off kind of at mid torso, and his arms then are kind of squeezed up into the composition. And so it looks quite cramped, actually. And what we have with Leonardo's portrait is a much more kind of relaxed kind of positioning of the arms. They're not kind of thrust up into the chest area, so she feels less compressed. It's a much more graceful kind of pose that she's holding here. And then what is implied also is the full sense of the body. I find with Botticelli is that we have a sense of the head and shoulders, and then the hands stuck in there, but we don't really have a sense of the full body of this figure. But with the Mona Lisa, we can imagine the rest of her. We don't need to see her legs. We read her, we kind of feel her as a full presence. Similarly, the kind of common way to show figures was kind of from the side view here, so the profile. You can see this with Piero della Francesca's Duchess of Urbino. Also, women in the Renaissance were supposed to be very demure. They are rarely making eye contact with the viewer. We do see some men making eye contact, like with the Botticelli, but women rarely are. And so this is quite striking. I mean, this would have been very, very different from the female portraiture that had come before. So for her to be looking out at the viewer would have felt quite bold and quite different for female portraiture. The second thing that is important to note about this painting is what's called sfumato technique. And so that's an Italian word. It means like smoke, sfumato. And it's a technique that Leonardo was developing with the use of oil paint. He's one of the first Italian, Florentine painters to start experimenting with oil paint. And what you can achieve with oil paint that you can't with like egg tempera or fresco technique, any other kind of painting that they would have been using at the time. Oil paint can reveal kind of subtle gradations of color. So you can get very, very subtle changes in gradations and shading. So if you look around the nose and the mouth and the eyes, around her chin, kind of the side of her, the left side of her face, so to our right, notice how there's no actual line, that we can't, where her kind of the lid of her kind of the brow bone, where that starts and ends, we can't tell because it's like smoke. The shadow or the shading kind of deepens and lightens as smoke does. So there's no kind of defined line around kind of a what are those called? I want to say a wasp of smoke. That's not right. Whatever. A thing of smoke. Here's another detail. Look at that around the nose and the mouth. There's a complete absence of line. He's achieving everything through gradations of shading to create a sense of roundness and of depth. And you can't get that with earlier types of paint that the Italians were using in the early Renaissance. Oil paint kind of gradually trickles down from Northern Europe. The Venetians start to use it some, and then Leonardo da Vinci really figures it out. So compare, like I said, thinking about linearity and line. Look at the line around the nose, kind of separating the Piero della Francesca painting, kind of separating her features, the line around her chin and neck, stretching up to that kind of the hair there. But there is some shading you can see around her temple and around kind of the bridge of her nose. But it's not nearly as expressive as Leonardo is capturing here with the Mona Lisa. This will be a bit granular on your screen, but you can see the lines here. Look around her mouth, compare her mouth and nose with that of the Mona Lisa. Similarly with Botticelli's, look at those lines, nose and mouth. There's like I said, there's some shading, but it's not nearly as gradual as what we see with Leonardo. And he's really the first artist to do something like that. Look at that difference. I'm going to go back again. Nose, mouth. Keep that in your head. Bam. Nose, mouth. Amazing. And this is I mean, it's hard to tell because it has yellowed with time. It was probably a brighter, more colorful painting. But this is much more true to life. Like, we don't exist with stark lines like we do kind of recede or come out of shadow gradually in the real world. Look at her hands again, the way that the edges appear almost hazy between her fingers. Compare that to Botticelli's figures. Look at his hands and the sharp line around his nails and in between his fingers compared to that of the Leonardo fingers. Do I have a detail? No, I don't. Oops, I'll have to go back. Fingers. There. So just to sum up with the question about why this is an important painting. So like I said, the composition, the pose, the posture, kind of the nature of her gaze, and then that sfumato technique. So there is more individuality, there is more monumentality, there is more gracefulness, kind of an element of this figure having of an individualistic kind of character, a personality, which I think maybe is why we're drawn. We talk about the smile, that kind of indistinct sort of expression she has, that there's a bit of mystery in her persona. And now I'll tell you about why this is the most famous painting in the world. And it doesn't really have anything to do with sfumato. What happened is that Leonardo had other portraits or other paintings that were probably more famous than the Mona Lisa for centuries, right? But what happened in August of 1911? There was a monumental art heist at the Louvre. One day the Mona Lisa was there. The next day the Mona Lisa was gone. There was a great deal of consternation, obviously, but also confusion at the Louvre because they couldn't quite figure out maybe she'd been moved for conservation or for cleaning. Was she in some other part of the Louvre, some other wing? Like I said, this place is enormous. So they look around for her for about a week. Canvas. So no, it's for sure it has been stolen. And initially, this is incredible. Initially, the French poet Guillaume Apollinaire is accused of the theft. He's arrested. He's imprisoned. And Apollinaire, are you ready for this? Apollinaire implicates Picasso, Pablo Picasso. He said, "Oh, Picasso did it." So eventually, both Picasso and Apollinaire were cleared of this accusation. In truth, what had happened was there was a worker at the Louvre named Vincenzo Perugia, and you can tell from his name, Vincenzo was Italian, and he was an ardent kind of Italian patriot, and he thought that the Mona Lisa should be back in Italy. It was by Leonardo da Vinci. It was by a great Italian painter. It should be in the Uffizi. And so he takes it off the wall. He had actually worked on the casing, the frame. So he takes it off the wall. He hides it in a broom closet for the rest of the day. He stole it. He took it off the wall during opening hours. Okay. Hides it in a closet and then carries it out under his coat. He keeps it in his apartment for 2 years and then is caught eventually because he tried to sell it to the director of the Uffizi. And that's he gets caught. Like they turn him in. They're like, no, it doesn't belong to the Uffizi. It belongs to the Louvre. So poor Vincenzo gets caught. He's actually a hero in Italy for doing this daring heist in the name of Italian. Italian, the name of Italian patriotism or spirit, and it's returned to the Louvre. But as you can see from this journal or this newspaper, for 2 years, the Mona Lisa, the image of this painting was displayed across the world in newspapers. And so everyone became familiar with it because of this. Well, one of the reasons, because of this art heist. And so it was reproduced again and again and again and again. And it kind of captured the worldwide imagination. So one of the most famous art heists. It's since then, it's been the subject of kind of numerous attacks. So someone threw a rock a few years later and broke the glass. It chipped a bit of the paint on her elbow. So then it was put behind bulletproof glass. Someone threw a teacup at it. Once someone's spray painted it, again, the bulletproof glass, when it was on loan to Tokyo. And I mean, every time that happens, then again, the image is kind of spread across the world media. So really, that's why. And some of Leonardo's other paintings would be probably, more important perhaps in kind of defining who he is as an artist and why he's important. So again, if I was teaching a survey class or an introduction to art history, I may not show this painting. I might show another one by Leonardo to talk about some of the other things that were driving him and his work. But they weren't subject to this enormous and brilliant and charming, really charming art heist. So that's the story. That answers the question. The second question, I think. So once again, how you can support the lecture series is to donate at jonesgallery.ca/art history. We'd love to keep producing this content. This is coming to you in during this period of isolation. So we normally have lectures in person at the gallery. We unfortunately can't do that during pandemic times. So we're trying to put out more video content. So if you'd like to support us, please do. And also technical support today is done by Caleb Jones, as always, technical support. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.